All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College Application and Website Development, or AWD1111 database-driven web development class, I'm doing a series of presentations, videos, whatever you want to call them, I guess, based on the PDFs from Mr. Flavio Cope's The Valley of Code. And as a review, I'm doing his HTML handbook, CSS handbook, and JavaScript handbook. And then as we get into the other part of the class, I will do his Node.js handbook and his React handbook. Okay? All right. So where we left off last time was talking about inheritance. And it says when you set some properties on a selector in CSS, they're inherited by all children. And it says some properties. It says this happens because some properties make sense to be inherited and others make more sense not to be inherited. It says think about fonts. You don't need to apply the font family to every single tag on your page. All right. In fact, if you want one standard font to be used, period, you could really put that in the body tag at the top. All right. On the other hand, something like a background color makes more sense, or makes little sense rather, to be inherited. So they give you this big list of properties here that do inherit. And they even say the list is non-comprehensive. All right, but these are the ones you're probably going to look at most often. And he says he got this from a nice SitePoint article, which I guess is not referenced. It says, what if you have a property that's not inherited by default and you want to force it to be? And if it is, you can use the keyword inherit. So it says in the children, you set the property value to the keyword inherit. So this would force paragraphs to have the same background color, the yellow, all right, as the body. So you might say, well, why didn't you just put yellow there then? Well, remember, if this changes, let's say to blue, then I'd have to remember to change this as well. Okay? If you want to do the opposite and force something not to inherit, you can use the revert keyword. It says there in practice this is rarely used. All right, there are other values that are in here. There's one called initial that says use the default if it's available. And there's unset. All right, so it says if the property inherits something by default, inherit it, otherwise do nothing. All right. It says from any CSS file, you can import another CSS file using the import directive. All right. So that URL, as it says, you can use this for either an absolute or a relative URL. It says one important thing to know about imports is they must be put before any other CSS in the file, or they can be ignored. Now, one of the places where this can become important is if we go out here and we go out to Google Fonts. You may or may not have noticed this before, but if you go out to Google Fonts, that's not what I want. I want fonts.google. There we go. Don't want knowledge. How about just fonts.google.com? There we are. And let's say that I go, for example, and I just go for Roboto, which tend to be used a lot. And if I click over here for Roboto, all right, what you'll typically notice in here is as you start to build this, so I'll choose this. What is it doing here? I will choose this one and this one. And you'll notice that in this case, there is a link that I can use to add this. So I can add this into my style sheet, or at the top of my style sheet, I can instead choose to import that. All right. Now, is there really a big advantage of one over the other? In my humble opinion, it's which one you're more comfortable using. All right. All right, let's jump into attribute selectors. We've looked at these a little bit, and the author says we've already introduced several of the basic selectors. All right. You can check if an element has an attribute by putting it inside of brackets. So this will select all the paragraph tags in the page that have an ID attribute, and it doesn't matter what the ID attribute is. So if you were styling different paragraphs in different ways, but you wanted all of them to have something that was in common, you could use this. There's an exact attribute selector. All right. And where is that used? Well, just to show you, let's see. Because I don't remember offhand how to do this. So I'm going to cheat a little bit here and bring this in here and say W3 schools, how to style a text box, which is not, I mean, it's an input element. Let's see. All right, they're actually using this CSS file right here. I'm going to see if I can bring that up. There it is. Well, I'm making that much harder than it has to be. All right. There. So input, and you can say type equals. There is an example when you're using the attribute selector to be more specific. So if I say type equal text, as it says here, it will do the text fields. If I say type equal password, it'll be only the passwords. Type equal number. There's similar things you can use for date, time, or you can use for TEL, for email, etc. Okay. All right. Match an attribute value. I'm not going to read this. You can take a look at this. And they're talking about partials. All right. And really, with all this stuff, the only way to become comfortable with it is to make yourself a simple web page, add a CSS file to it, and start going to town. Okay? All right, pseudo classes. Here are some of them. All right, and some more. It says, let's do an example, a common one actually. You want to style a link to create a CSS rule for the anchor element. Well, we've already done this. We've done something like this. All right. So here, all right. So I believe that when you do it, it's got to be in this order. This is what I wanted to show you. All right, so I'm going to grab all of this. Okay. And I'll probably end up removing it right away because this very well could look god ugly. But in fact, let's do this. Let's come in and let's come in here. And I'm going to put all these in here, but I only want them for inside of a paragraph. Okay. All right, now I'm going to add a paragraph into my CSS with anchor tags in it. There's one. Just put a line break in here. In fact, a couple of them. All right. So I've got one in here for Google and one for ranking. Okay. Now, why am I showing you this? First of all, let's go back to our styles and let's put some god-awful colors in here. So for paragraph, things that are unvisited, let's make this purple, which is 800 and 080. Pound 800. I don't want it to be purple. We'll make it yellow. Pound FFFF00. That's yellow. So that's if it's unvisited, it's now yellow. If it's been visited, we can make it, let's make it orange, which is FFA500. All right, let's do a mouse over, and that one will make pink. FFC0CB. FFC0CB, was that? I think that's right. And this last one, when something is active, let's make it gray. All right. Now let's take a look at these links. All right. So now notice we've got go to the Rankin Technical College website. You see that it's orange. All right. What does that mean? Well, orange, we got to go back then and take a look at what we're working on. Orange means it was already visited, so we've clicked on it already. We have not clicked on the one for Google, and notice that that's yellow. But if I put my mouse over either one of these, they turn pink. So pink is hover. All right. Yellow is not yet visited. All right. And the other one, selected, should be gray. When does that kick in? So let's look. I'm going to take this one and I'm going to click on it, but I'm going to hold. See how it gets gray? Now when I let go, okay, It went to Google, which is fine. I could care less. But when I come back, notice it now it's green. In fact, they're both green. All right. And the order in which you set these is very important. All right. Because they can override or overwrite one another. All right. There are other pseudo elements that you can use. Okay. So notice first letter. We probably, when I did that span tag before, we probably could have gone and done a first letter on that to make the first letter, to do some styling on that. So let's go and look at this. And we will come back to the paragraph we were just in here. And I'm going to set that paragraph. I'm going to give it a class of kind of a dumb name, but I'm just going to call it my para. Okay, and save that. And now I'm going to jump back to here, and I'm going to do the class of my para. All right, and I'm going to say the first letter, oops, wrong. Paragraph first letter, I want the font size to be 4rem. And I'm actually embedding here. I'm not sure if this is going to work or not. Okay, it doesn't seem to like that. So let's see, will it mind this? All right, so we're just going to use the pseudo class. So the first letter now should have a font size of 4rem in all my paragraphs. Let's see what that did. Well, notice that that's now 4rem. And so is that. Okay? And it's just the first letter that it does that for. Okay? That even overrode rather, what we had done before when we did that span, I believe. All right. So there's a lot of ways this can be used, in other words. All right. All right, we're at 18 minutes. Let's jump into colors. And some of this we've already looked at. All right. There are, I think at least, I could be wrong, but I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go down here and I'm going to talk about colors. In fact, let's do it. We'll do it in here. Let's go to the About page because there's no text in here. All right. So we're in the About page other than our H1 tag. I'm going to put some comments in here. This will be a color testing page. All right. So let's talk about all the different ways that we can test colors. Okay. Number one, RGB, well, we'll call them built-in colors. Example, the word red. Number two, RGB colors. Example, pound FF0000. Okay. Let's see. I shouldn't say RGB. I should say hex. Number three. All right, we can do a hex color with alpha. Example, pound FF0000. I think this would work. 0.5. All right, and that'd have to be a pound sign. Okay, that may be the wrong syntax, but you're going to see this in just a minute anyway. So we'll say this. Just hex with alpha. Next, RGB. and that should be RGB 255 for total saturation of red, 0 for no green, 0 for no blue. There's also an RGB with alpha. Finally, there's what's called an HSL, which stands for hue, saturation, and light. I believe that's how it's spelled. And finally, there is an HSL with alpha. So there's actually 7 different ways that you can set colors. So let's look at this. Let's come in and first of all, let's just put in a paragraph. So I'm going to put a paragraph in. I'm going to say lorem 15. So I've got 15 words in here. Okay, and I'm going to copy this paragraph about 5 times. Okay, so let's put in here a class which is equal to, call it color word. Okay, then we're going to put another one in here that's going to be called color hex. Then another one in here that's going to be called color hex alpha. Then we will put in color RGB, followed by color RGB alpha, and color HSL. Just copy this line. And color HSL alpha. Now, right now, there is nothing special that's been put in here. So in other words, as of right now, these are all going to just look probably pretty similar. All right, they may have a big first letter on there, but I don't really care. So let's look. Oh, it's on the About page. There you go. Okay, so we've got those. I don't know why we didn't get one here, but we didn't, and we didn't get one here. So the numbers 2 and 4 did not get one. So what do we have here? Oh. So I need a P tag here. And I need another one here. So let's see. Class equals. That should have fixed it. So let's see if it did. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Good. Now let's write classes for each one of these. And I'm going to copy this because otherwise I'll forget what they are. I'm going to put this in a comment for now, and I'll get rid of it later when I don't need it anymore. So we've got color word. All right, so I'm going to say here P dot color word, and I'm going to make that color. Let's make that, we've used this before, but let's use the word orange. How about orange red? Orange red. Okay, let's see if we've changed that one. And you can see it's changed its color. That was just by using the word. Now let's come in here and let's do a second one. This will be color hex. And let's make this just green. In fact, what is green? Well, there's a green yellow. ADFF2F. ADFF2F. So now I'm using a hex color. So let's see if that one worked. So there's that one. All right. Now we want to use hex with alpha. I think we can do that. All right, how to use this with alpha values. So let's see if they have an example. Adding that. We're going to grab the same one that we just had here. But this will be hex alpha. All right, and then on the end here, we're going to put in here 0, 0. Notice it becomes white then. That's not what we want. How about 55? And now notice it's kind of a lighter color. Let's make it 35. All right. Save that and run it. Now it's so light you can barely see it. And what that is that's a number. The alpha really is representing a number that's how, for lack of better words, vibrant or washed out the color is. So let's change that just so you can see what I'm talking about here. So I want you to be able to understand this. And that is, I'm going to change this to 0.0000035. Notice how it becomes gray. That's black. But if I make this a big number like FF, now it's as black as it can be. If I change this, for example, to 0F, notice how it's gray because it's half white, half black here. All right, let's make it something in the middle. So we'll make it about 55. And you can see then that it becomes a grayish value. There it is. All right, so what's next? This is RGB. So we want color RGB. Let's come in here and put in 255, 0, 255. And you'll notice that it's kind of a purplish color, okay? And let's take a look at that one. There it is. So I've now done 1, 2, 3, 4 of these. Let's go and copy this down. But this will be RGB alpha. And I think that I spelled it wrong because it looks like I've got alpha, something like that. But let's put one more number. Let's put one more number here. And we'll put in 0.75. I think this will work, but we're going to find out. All right. So let me jump back into here. And where I had those paragraphs, It's right here. Spell it correctly. There we go. All right. Now it doesn't really look any different here, but let's change this to 0.25. And you see it's looking much more washed out now. All right. If I had put this as a 1, it would look probably just like this. But now with the way I've got it, now notice 1, 2, 3, 4, there's our fifth one. All right, and then finally, let's look with HSL. And to be honest with you, I very rarely, if ever, use HSL. All right, but I'm putting it in here because I'm trying to be complete. That's too much. HSL colors W3 schools. There we go. So we're using percentages. That's a great example right there. That's the hue, saturation, and light. So let's grab some odd color. How about this brown? So we'll grab this right here. So it's kind of a brownish, as you can see. So it's got 40 for the hue, the saturation is 45%, and the lightness is 74%. So I'm just grabbing those numbers that are there. So let's throw that up there now. It's going to give me an error possibly, but that's okay. So let's copy this down. So this will be HSL. And the color is going to be this. And you notice that kind of goofy looking brown that's right there. All right. And when we look at this, there's that brown. Finally, we should be able to do the hue, saturation, and light and put some alpha in there. All right. Like I said, I very rarely, if ever, use this. All right, let's come in here and do this again. But we will put a comma in here. Come on. And put in a number, 0.33. And you can see how it looks much more washed out. If I change that to 6.6, it still looks more washed out. And if I make it, if I want it just a little bit lighter than it currently is, I'll point like 0.88. And there's very little difference between these. So let's knock it back down. We'll make it 70. All right, that's even not very much. How about 60? And you can see there is a difference between these two colors. Let's take a look at it when we run this. And this is lighter than this. So I did come in and show you all of the stuff. Now you can basically set color. You can set background color for just about anything and or everything that you need to set. All right, now that's a very much of a blanket statement, but most things you can set color and background color for. There's border colors too. So I showed you the name colors, and they're on several pages here. You notice, I don't know if this says how many there are. CSS started with 16, but today there's a larger number. Well, I don't know what this number is. I don't feel like counting it. If you told me, let's just say 100, might even be more than that, probably are. All right, I showed you RGB, the red, green, blue. All right, and as it says, the alpha lets you enter an alpha channel to enter the amount of transparency that you want. So here it would be half transparent. All right, I showed you the hex. Hex is base 16, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Instead of what we would call 10 in decimal, again, it's A. And what we would call 15 in decimal would be F. Okay. I also showed you HSL and HSLA. So let's stop it here, and I'll go into units in the next portion.